Pause for a moment and breathe this in, because this message is not coincidence, it is confirmation. You were not shaped by comfort, applause, or ease. You were forged in silence, pressure, loss, and long nights where only Allah knew what your heart was carrying. When others collapsed under far lighter trials, you were pushed into storms that rewired your soul, stripped away illusions, and forced you to choose between breaking or bowing, and you bowed. You did not become bitter when betrayed, arrogant when tested, or faithless when delayed. You became deeper, calmer, stronger, and more surrendered. While people misread your quietness as weakness, Allah witnessed discipline. While they doubted your path, Allah was refining your character. This is not about ego or self-glory. This is about what happens when a servant endures, trusts, and transforms for the sake of Allah. If you have ever wondered why your journey felt heavier, lonelier, and more intense than others, listen closely, because what you became under pressure is exactly why Allah chose you, chosen one. Reflect deeply on this truth, because it explains why your journey unfolded the way it did. When hardship surrounded you from every direction, when injustice knocked at your door, when people disappointed you and outcomes shattered your expectations, rebellion would have been the easier path, complaining, blaming Allah, turning cold toward faith, or justifying sin in the name of pain. But instead, something within you chose submission, and that choice did not come from weakness. It came from depth of Iman that Allah Himself nurtured through struggle. You questioned with sincerity but never with arrogance. You cried but still prayed. You felt exhausted yet continued to say, Ya Allah, I trust you even when I do not understand. And this is the kind of surrender that the angels witness and record with awe, because submission in ease is common, but submission under pressure is rare and precious. When your heart was screaming for relief, you still lowered your head in sujood. When your ego wanted to respond, defend, expose, or retaliate, you restrained yourself because you feared displeasing Allah more than being misunderstood by people. Many around you chose rebellion. Some walked away from prayer. Some hardened their hearts. Some justified wrongdoing. But you chose restraint, patience, and obedience, even while bleeding internally. And Allah saw every moment you fought your nafs, every time you swallowed anger, every time you obeyed Him while your soul felt heavy. This is why your trials refined you, instead of destroying you. Because submission purified your intentions, softened your heart, and anchored you in tawakkul, transforming pain into elevation and confusion into clarity. Allah was impressed not by outward success, but by the fact that when rebellion whispered the loudest, you answered with surrender, and that single choice reshaped your destiny in the unseen long before any visible breakthrough appeared. Chosen one. Understand this with full awareness of the divine wisdom behind your pain. Allah did not test you randomly, nor did He strike where it was easiest. He tested you exactly where your heart was most attached, where your emotions were deepest, where your hopes were planted, and where you felt the most alive, because Allah knew that if this attachment remained unchecked, it would quietly compete with reliance upon Him. He touched relationships you prayed would last, dreams you built with sincerity, plans you thought were finally aligning, and identities you thought defined you. And when they began to slip from your grasp, it felt like your chest was being torn open, not because Allah was cruel, but because He was calling your heart back to its original center. You were forced to confront the truth that anything you love more than Allah can become a hidden idol, and through loss, delay, separation, and disappointment, Allah was gently yet firmly teaching you that attachment belongs only to Him. Many people lose what they love and collapse into resentment, bitterness, or disbelief. But you allowed the pain to purify you instead. You cried, you grieved, you questioned, yet you still said, "Ya Allah, if this is your decree, then make my heart accept it." And that acceptance elevated you in ways comfort never could. Allah was impressed by how you loosened your grip without hardening your heart, how you learned to love without possession, and how you trusted Him enough to let go even when your soul resisted, because releasing what your heart clings to for Allah's sake is one of the highest forms of faith. Through this test, your attachment was transformed into tawakkul, your desperation into surrender, and your heartbreak into clarity, and what once felt like punishment was in truth a divine recalibration, aligning your heart so that nothing would ever sit on the throne that belongs to Allah alone. Chosen one, recognize the quiet strength it took to remain pure in a world that constantly pressured you to compromise, because the environment around you was not designed to protect your heart, it was designed to test it. Temptation was normalized, shortcuts were glorified, dishonesty was rewarded, and integrity was treated as weakness. Yet you resisted becoming what surrounded you. You were placed among people who bent principles for comfort, who justified sin for survival, and who mocked restraint as foolishness. But you chose to guard your intentions, your character, your tongue, and your actions, even when no one was watching and no immediate reward was visible. There were moments when staying clean cost you opportunities, relationships, and ease, when choosing halal over haram made your path longer and lonelier. Yet you did not poison your soul just to move faster or fit in. Allah was watching when you walked away from what looked easy but felt wrong, when you controlled desires that others indulged openly, and when you chose Allah's pleasure over temporary gain. And this kind of unseen discipline carries immense weight in the heavens. Many people appear successful while slowly corroding inside. But you chose inner purity over outer approval, and that decision protected your heart from becoming darkened or numb. Allah was impressed by your quiet resistance, by your ability to remain gentle without becoming naive and firm, without becoming harsh. Because purity in corruption is not weakness. It is evidence of strong Iman, conscious taqwa, and a heart that belongs to Allah. This is why your spirit feels different, why your presence unsettles darkness, and why Allah preserved you. Because what you protected for His sake, He now protects for yours. Chosen one. This lesson goes even deeper than it appears, because Allah did not merely allow you to feel pain. He allowed it to stay long enough to reveal what kind of soul you truly were. And when the weight became unbearable, when disappointment stacked upon disappointment, when trust was broken repeatedly and sincerity was met with coldness, Allah watched closely to see whether pain would turn you into someone harsh, defensive, and emotionally violent, or someone grounded, perceptive, and wise. You were wounded in places people could not see, by words that were never apologized for, by actions that were never explained, and by losses that offered no closure. And in those moments, cruelty would have felt justified. You could have hardened your heart, sharpened your tongue, distrusted everyone, and treated people as disposable the way you were treated. Yet you made a far more difficult choice. You chose consciousness over reaction. You allowed pain to slow your impulses instead of accelerating your anger. You learned to pause before responding, to observe before judging, and to understand patterns instead of taking everything personally. And this is not natural behavior. It is learned through hardship endured with Allah. You began to recognize that not everyone who hurts you is powerful, and not everyone who wounds you is your enemy. Some are simply unhealed, some are ignorant, and some are reflections of lessons Allah wants you to learn. And this realization softened your heart without making you naive. Allah saw how you refused to weaponize your suffering, how you did not use your pain to control, manipulate, or dominate others, how you did not make your trauma an excuse to humiliate, belittle, or emotionally punish people, even when you had every reason to do so. Instead, pain gave you discernment. You learned who deserved access and who deserved distance, who needed compassion and who required boundaries, and how to walk away without hatred living inside you. You became emotionally literate, spiritually alert, and internally disciplined, able to hold empathy and self-respect at the same time, which is a rare balance many never achieve. While others turned their wounds into sharp edges that cut everyone they encountered, you turned yours into mirrors that taught you self-awareness, patience, and depth. And Allah was impressed by this transformation, because wisdom born from pain is far more valuable than kindness born from ease. You did not deny your hurt, but you did not let it become your identity. You processed it with dua, reflection, and silence, instead of broadcasting it as bitterness or aggression. This is why your presence now carries calm instead of chaos, understanding instead of volatility, and authority without intimidation, because pain passed through you without corrupting your spirit. Allah refined you until suffering taught you when to speak softly, when to remain silent, when to show mercy, and when to stand firm. And this level of emotional and spiritual intelligence is not accidental. It is the mark of someone Allah has prepared to influence, guide, and protect others without harming them. Chosen one, this lesson reaches into the deepest chambers of sincerity, because continuing to do good without recognition is one of the most exhausting forms of worship, and Allah allowed you to experience it repeatedly to see whether your heart was attached to appreciation or anchored in Him alone. There were seasons when you poured from an empty cup, when you gave advice, support, time, effort, loyalty, and emotional presence to people who never paused to ask how you were doing, never acknowledged the weight you carried, and never returned even a fraction of the care you offered. Yet you still showed up with dignity. You helped without broadcasting. You listened without interrupting. You prayed for people who misunderstood you. And you protected reputations that could have been easily destroyed, all while your own sacrifices remained unseen and uncelebrated. At times, it hurt deeply to realize that people enjoyed the benefits of your goodness, but ignored the cost of it. And there were moments when your soul whispered, "Why do I keep giving when no one notices?" But Allah was listening, and He was shaping your intentions through that silence. Many people become selective with goodness once they feel unappreciated. They harden, withdraw, or begin keeping mental records of who deserves kindness. But you resisted that shift because Allah trained your heart to understand that goodness tied to recognition is fragile, while goodness tied to faith is unbreakable. You learned that when people fail to acknowledge you, it does not mean your effort was wasted. It means Allah Himself took ownership of it. Allah was watching when you chose to remain respectful despite being taken for granted, when you maintained character in environments that rewarded ego, and when you refused to punish others with coldness just because they failed to value your warmth. You discovered that sincerity, ikhlas, is not proven when people praise you, but when no one claps and you still act righteously. And this realization purified your soul more than comfort ever could. There were times when others received credit for what you planted, when your contributions were quietly erased or minimized, and when your role was reduced to nothing in the final outcome, yet you swallowed your pride and reminded yourself that Allah never misplaces effort, even when people rewrite narratives. You understood that if Allah accepted your deed, it did not matter who saw it. And if Allah rejected it, no amount of recognition could save it. And this awareness grounded you in humility. Allah was impressed by how you continued to give without demanding gratitude, how you did not make goodness conditional upon fairness, and how you treated kindness as an act of worship rather than a transaction. You became someone who gives because it aligns with who you are before Allah, not because it guarantees return, and this freed your heart from bitterness and expectation. In a world obsessed with being seen, validated, and celebrated, Allah taught you the power of being unseen, because what is done quietly for His sake carries barakah that public deeds often lack. Every unthanked effort refined you, every overlooked sacrifice detached you from ego, and every moment of silent endurance strengthened your trust that Allah is Al-Adil, the most just, and Ash-Shakur, the most appreciative. What people ignored did not disappear. It accumulated in the unseen, multiplying in ways you cannot yet measure, preparing rewards, protection, and elevation that arrive without announcement. This is why your heart feels lighter now despite carrying so much, why your goodness remains intact despite disappointment, and why Allah preserved you from becoming bitter because He was training you to act for Him alone. The world may never fully recognize what you gave, but Allah recorded it all with precision, and when the time comes for recompense, you will realize that being unseen by people was never a loss. It was a divine advantage. Chosen one, sit with this truth slowly, because forgiveness is not what the world teaches. It is a divine art, a trial, and a purification of the heart. And Allah tested you with situations where closure was never given, apologies never came, truths were never spoken, and justice seemed delayed indefinitely, yet you chose to forgive, not because they deserved it, not because circumstances were resolved, but because your soul demanded peace, and your heart recognized that holding on to resentment would only chain you to bitterness and prolong suffering that Allah never intended for you to bear. You were hurt deeply by betrayal from those you trusted, by lies disguised as honesty, by actions that shattered expectations, by omissions that left wounds bleeding quietly, and you understood that seeking closure from others is often futile, because not everyone possesses the courage, awareness, or integrity to confront their wrongs, and yet your spirit refused to remain bound to the need for acknowledgement, recognition, or reparation. Many people carry grievances like trophies, replaying wrongs endlessly in their minds, allowing anger to grow roots in their hearts, feeding resentment as if it were nourishment, and turning themselves into perpetual prisoners of pain. But you, chosen one, recognize that forgiveness is a choice independent of apology, a liberation that is not granted by others, but taken through conscious surrender to Allah. And it is this very act that distinguishes the heart refined by divine wisdom from the heart hardened by human failure. You learn to release, not to forget, because forgetting can lead to carelessness, but releasing transfers responsibility for justice to the one who is most just, most wise, and most aware. You forgave silently, without confrontation, without explanation, without demanding recognition, and without bargaining for reciprocity, because you understood that Allah is the ultimate arbiter of justice, and when the wrongs are placed in His hands, they are never lost, overlooked, or dismissed. This level of spiritual maturity is exceedingly rare. Chosen one, because forgiving without closure requires a deep trust in Allah's decree, a conscious letting go of the illusion that closure from the human is necessary, and the awareness that holding on is a choice, while releasing is obedience. You resisted the temptation to respond in anger, to retaliate in subtle ways, to spread gossip, to seek revenge, or to harbor bitterness quietly in your heart, because you understood that each act of retaliation feeds the ego, and every seed of bitterness poisons the soul. But every act of conscious forgiveness cultivates closeness to Allah, strengthens your spirit, and elevates your station in ways that are imperceptible to the world, yet profoundly visible to the heavens. There were moments when forgiving felt impossible, when tears poured uncontrollably because the injustice seemed unbearable, when your mind demanded reasoning and confrontation, and when your heart cried out for acknowledgement that would never come, yet you held your tongue, controlled your impulses, and redirected your energy toward prayer, reflection, and trust in Allah's perfect judgment, understanding that what you release in obedience becomes a source of light, mercy, and divine reward. While others waited for closure to feel relief, you created peace internally, independent of external validation, and in doing so, you became an example of spiritual sovereignty. No one could bind you, control you, or dictate your emotional state because your heart had learned to belong fully to Allah alone. The act of forgiving without needing closure transformed you. It reshaped your emotional framework, elevated your understanding of human imperfection, and refined your soul in ways that only trials orchestrated by Allah could achieve. You became someone whose peace is not contingent on human apology, whose dignity is not dictated by recognition, and whose heart is unshakable even when betrayal occurs repeatedly, because forgiveness severed the chains of dependency on others' integrity, returning your soul to its rightful owner, Allah. This was not weakness, it was extraordinary strength, an inner power that only those who bow fully in submission can manifest. Allah was impressed by your ability to rise above anger, to release without diminishing self-respect, and to trust Him to address what you could not, because true forgiveness is never about the other person. It is always about obedience, liberation, and purification of the self. And every silent act of forgiveness you performed built an unseen fortress of resilience, patience, and spiritual authority around your heart. The absence of closure became a blessing, because it freed you from waiting for others to be whole before you could be at peace. And it taught you that peace comes not from circumstances aligning, but from alignment with Allah's decree, wisdom, and timing. You walked through fire without scorched skin, carried betrayal without wounded dignity, and held serenity when chaos surrounded you. And Allah watched every moment, recording your choice to release, not retaliate, to purify, not poison, and to elevate, not stoop. And in that witnessing, He was impressed not by the wrongs themselves, but by the way you navigated them, transforming potential bitterness into profound spiritual elevation, demonstrating that the chosen one's strength is measured not by victories over others, but by victory over self, by mastery of emotion, and by unwavering surrender to the one who is most just, most merciful, and most wise. You became proof that forgiveness does not require understanding, apology, or justice in the human sense, because when the heart surrenders to Allah, every wound transforms into a lesson, every betrayal becomes a calibration of discernment, and every moment of silent forgiveness becomes a seed of reward, protection, and elevation that grows unseen until the perfect time. Chosen one, in a world obsessed with retaliation, recognition, and revenge, you became the embodiment of divine wisdom, walking proof that the soul refined by Allah's trials will forgive without needing closure, will rise without asking for approval, and will shine without waiting for validation. And this alone is why Allah was impressed by what you became. Someone whose heart belongs fully to Him, whose spirit is untouchable by human injustice, and whose forgiveness echoes eternally in the unseen realm, where reward multiplies beyond imagination. Chosen one, understand this truth fully, because the trials you endured were never random, and the hardships you faced were never meaningless. Every moment of struggle, every delay, every heartbreak, every betrayal, every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, and every obstacle that seemed insurmountable was not a punishment, but a deliberate shaping, a divine sculpting of your soul, preparing you to become exactly what Allah intended long before the world could recognize your strength, and long before you could see the purpose yourself. You were pushed into circumstances that exposed your weaknesses, yet also illuminated your hidden potential, and while the world assumed you were breaking, Allah was healing the cracks in your character, reinforcing patience where impulsivity lurked, cultivating discernment where innocence could have been exploited, and instilling resilience where surrender could have faltered. Every loss, every separation, and every disappointment was a teacher disguised in hardship, guiding you to the station that only those chosen could reach. And even when the lessons felt unbearable, even when the weight threatened to crush you, your soul continued to trust, your heart continued to obey, and your faith refused to bend, because deep inside, Allah was cultivating a version of you that would rise above the limitations of ordinary understanding and ordinary endurance. You were being prepared for a life in which clarity replaces confusion, purpose replaces aimlessness, and presence replaces absence. And the trials were the crucible in which your spiritual identity was forged, transforming suffering into wisdom, pain into insight, and patience into profound strength that no human adversity could shake. Many people face difficulties, yet they emerge scarred, embittered, or bitterly hardened. But you, chosen one, were refined. Every test was calibrated to purify your intentions, sharpen your perception, elevate your character, and align your destiny with divine wisdom, so that when the moment came to step into the role Allah had prepared for you, you would be ready, not just emotionally, but spiritually, morally, and mentally prepared to navigate challenges with clarity, humility, and purpose. You became someone who understands the balance of justice and mercy, who perceives the hidden motives of people without judgment, who carries authority without arrogance, and who demonstrates strength without aggression, because the trials were not shaping you for ordinary life. They were shaping you to carry responsibility, influence hearts, protect the weak, guide the lost, and reflect Allah's light in ways that only a chosen soul can. Allah was impressed because while others allowed suffering to embitter them, you allowed it to refine you. While others demanded clarity before peace, you surrendered to divine timing. And while others reacted to pain with anger, you transformed it into discipline, patience, and unwavering faith. You became a living example that hardship is not just endured, it is utilized, internalized, and converted into a force that strengthens character, expands spiritual perception, and deepens reliance on Allah alone. Every difficulty that seemed unfair, every delay that felt unjust, and every obstacle that appeared insurmountable was a stepping stone toward the person you were destined to be, and Allah orchestrated every single moment with precision, knowing that only through this divine process could you evolve into someone capable of handling the responsibilities, influence, and spiritual weight that your destiny demands. You were not being tested to break you. You were being molded to rise higher than you ever imagined, to inspire without seeking recognition, to lead without demanding obedience, to forgive without expecting apology, and to remain steadfast when the world misunderstood your silence, all while maintaining a heart so pure, a spirit so resilient, and a faith so unwavering that even angels bear witness with amazement. Chosen one, realize that the journey itself was preparation, and that the person you are now, tempered by trials, illuminated by patience, and guided by unwavering trust, is exactly what Allah envisioned long before the first test began. Because only a refined heart, sharpened mind, and disciplined soul could carry the divine mission, influence the unseen, and navigate the world in alignment with what Allah has predestined. You became the culmination of every lesson, every struggle, every tear, and every moment of surrender. And Allah was impressed not just by what you endured, but by what you became. A servant whose presence carries wisdom, whose actions carry integrity, whose forgiveness carries power, whose patience carries depth, and whose heart carries a light that no darkness can extinguish. Because the trials did not break you, they built you, elevated you, and prepared you to fulfill a purpose far greater